as I finish off my vial, big ass vial. Drink some water. Didn't even put a sticker up this time. Wanted to be as raw as possible. The process is only in the present. The process is only in the present. Processing anything is always in the present. The resentment in not being perfect is an indicator of you being in the past. The anxiousness, the anxiety of not being perfect sets the tone of you being in the future. I'm going to say it one more time. Only in the present is potential, i.e. chaos that brings order. Only in the present is order. The reason why this is so important is because a lot of the times, we spend more time either in resentment, regret, dysfunction, trying to hide our dysfunctions from our present state, or trying to overcompensate for our anxiousness, our anxiety, and our impulses and aspects of the future for the lack of presence. I'm gonna ask you a question. You understand, or we should come to understand, that when you are thinking, you are listening. When you think you listen, you're actually listening. Whenever you have an idea in the present moment, that thought, that idea, that, ooh, I want to do this in the present moment, you're tapping into every possible reality that aligns with that aspect. Every possible reality. Past, present, future. Always going in the same continuum. How you access it is through that level of that emotion. One of the things that I used to do a lot was the only time where I would work out, only time I would go to the gym, only time I would work out, only time I would take care of myself, the only time where I would take care of myself, whether it's before the time, before I had a beard, before I had locks. I've been growing my locks for like 7 years now. Little things of that nature. The only time I would do certain things was based on, and I get into this all the time, was the context of the feeling or whatever I would need to emote to. So a lot of times when I would go to the gym, I would work out. I didn't understand that after a while, it didn't feel the same. I didn't understand it didn't feel the same. Like, why me going to the gym now doesn't feel the same as when I first went to the gym? Why when I'm getting this new job, the feeling that I had when I first had the job isn't there? Why when I got the new this or that? Why when I got the new spot, or I got in a new relationship, or I got out of this relationship, why doesn't it feel the same? Not allowing myself to sit in the present, I never followed it to the root. One of the biggest things that I do when I'm working with my clients, or working with clients, working with students, working with mentees, working with potential clients that's doing my overall work is getting to the root of that. Being able to acknowledge that I do have resentment. Being able to acknowledge that I do have regrets. Not only just acknowledging these things, but accepting that it's okay that I had that resentment. It's okay that I had that regret. It's okay that I am feeling anxious. It's okay that I am feeling this anxiety. It's okay that I'm feeling this feeling. Because a lot of times when we're sitting inside of that space, we kick ourselves out of the present. When I always talk about that trigger, let you know where you're not present, you're not in the now, is if I don't sit with it, then naturally I'm going to try to overcompensate. Or I'm going to undercut myself. I'm either going to overcompensate or I'm going to undercut myself. Meaning that one time when I was working out, going to the gym, in my runs heavy, doing my workouts, that one day that it rained, or that one day that I woke up late, I rationalized it by making it a cheat day. Okay, cool. I woke up kind of late, or it's raining outside, so I can't go for my run, or damn, I woke up too late. So by the time I get to the gym, I got to go to work. By the time I get to the gym, I have to rush. So I won't get the full aspects of the workout. So then I'll put it off for the day. We'll tell ourselves things like, you know what? I'll get to it the next time. That means if I miss today, if I miss working out today, I'll just go twice as hard tomorrow. If I miss the opportunity today, I'll just pick up and go harder tomorrow. Here's the improbable fact of saying that. It will never be the same. Sound the alarm. It will never be the same as the moment where you had the opportunity. Here's the thing. When we're so used to the instant gratification, when we're so used to the instant result, when we're so used to being on, when we're so used to being on and being able to do whatever the hell we want, when in reality we're doing what we can based on what we have and based on what we are needing to do, we lose sight of the actual feeling. You as an example. This week, starting Tuesday, is my first week getting back into my workouts. My first week getting back into my full workout. Actually going for my run, actually going through my calisthenics, actually doing my cardio, doing my strength training. My first week. This week feels different. It actually, because the reason that it feels different in a simple aspect, and we're going to build it out, is because I actually can feel it. Because leading up to this very week, everything that I did before this week, before this Tuesday that just passed, actually led up to this moment. It actually led up to this moment. Everything that I've done has actually led up to this moment. The embracing the feeling of understanding that there's shit that you said that you were going to do back in 2002, 2003, 2004, back in them earlier years in the 2000s, sometimes in the 99s, sometimes in the 88s, sometimes in the 80s. Just depending on where your age is at. Until you resolve those things, you don't have access full to that energy. You don't have access to that energy. The simplicity of me being able to realize that every time that I said I was going to work out, every time that I said I was going to work out, every time that I said I was going to work out, I was going to get back into the gym, I was going to get back into me, regardless if I honored the thought or not. It was simply the aspect of why I did not honor the thought. It wasn't the what. It wasn't the because I didn't have this, because I couldn't do this, I didn't have the money, whatever it was. It was the why, or the emotional aspect to behind why I'm not doing certain things. It's because how I defined myself inside of those spaces that set the tone to what I'm supposed to be doing or what I need to do next. It was because I did not want to sit with the why of the definition that I created in the first place. One of the biggest things one of the major keys. One question that I ask myself every single day. I ask myself this question every single day. I've been getting better at it every single day because that's the key of the process, is asking myself, is the version that I am now, would they survive or would they thrive in my past aspects of myself? Is the version of myself now, is this version of me equipped to either survive or thrive, to grow and expand or stay within complacency based on any past event that's happened in my life? Followed by me going through my root analysis of, okay, in this moment in my life, this version of myself now, would they survive inside of that space? Here's the trippy part about the aspects, you time jumping. A lot of times when we have that conversation with ourselves, we try to visualize the version that we are now in that space. So to use aspects of visualization, I'll try to visualize the version of myself with locks, with a beard, wearing my adornments. I'll try to visualize my physical form in that space. But I never really think about it like this. The only thing that goes back into that space is your consciousness, your awareness. One of the biggest things when I'm working with one of the biggest things I do when I'm working with my clients, is helping them release from the physical form, in aspects of release from that physical state, the what is manifested in those aspects of those emotions that they have not tapped into and dealt with, and us sitting back in that space as the consciousness. This aspect, when we think about the actual the time traveling continuum, and why they say, and we've seen it in Back to the Future, you've seen it in movie when they go back to the past, they say do not interact with your past self at all costs, because it'll change everything. What they were talking about is the aspects of of you integrating with them in a physical state. Do not physically interact with your past self. So this led me to aspects of form and think. I've been thinking about this for a while. Beautiful Sunday. I have no sessions today. Beautiful day to actually tap in, knock into this. Until I thought about my consciousness, my awareness, my resolve, how much I've resolved now. The resolved version of myself can thrive in any time period, past life, current past life cycles, whatever it is, can thrive there. He will thrive there because of my resolve, just simply because of me being resolved. That means I could go back into a position, a space and time, and I'm not thinking about this, the simplicity of it. I'm not thinking about changing anything. The thing that will fuck you up in the aspect of whenever I take you back to a past life regression, if you have any thought process of I would change this, I wouldn't do this, I would do this better, if you have any thought or resentment, regret of trying to perfect the past, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it in that aspect of the past. If I take you into the aspects of bring you into your present self and you jump into the aspects of your future and you have any aspects of anxiety, anxiousness, and then it kicks you out of the system, because it will kick you out of your system, the flow, it'll show you. Here's the reason why. I can go back to, I was 13 years old. I'm going to take you back on the story. When I was 13 years old, I remember me, my brother, my sisters were sitting out. We were outside playing, and I said something or I did something, and my pops, it was the first time that he called me the Antichrist and he called me Lucifer. The first time I ever heard that term being used towards me. My pops literally called me Lucifer. The emotion around that at that point in time fucked me up. It of course, it naturally fucked up my head. But then I thought about it. After that moment, the first time I went back to this memory, I sat with it and I kept getting kicked out. Because I kept trying to change things that had led up to that point. I kept trying to change why my pops would say it. I kept trying to change the events that happened inside of that space so that wouldn't happen. Not understanding the necessity for everything to happen as it needs to happen. The first time I didn't kick it out, the first time I didn't get kicked out, I sat with the resentment, I sat with the regret, I sat with the dysfunction, I sat with these emotions in that space. I was then sitting, and I remember back in the day, all of us, everybody wanted to be a rapper or a singer back in the early 2000s. Everybody wanted to be a rapper, everybody wanted to be a singer, everybody wanted to do poetry, everybody wanted to do all that shit. I remember the name that I started calling myself. Because my name is Carlos. I started calling myself Lucifer. Losifer. Started calling myself Lucifer. I started coming up, one of my favorite lyrics was always say to myself, they call me Lucifer because I'm Lucifer's wet dream. Meaning I'm embracing what I thought at the time was what it was to be in the truest aspects of embracing being bad, embracing being rebellious in that point in time. This is around me being 12, 13, between 12 and 16. Embracing these aspects of me being rebellious, embracing my rebellious nature. I wanted to put a title to it. I wanted to rationalize it. But here's the key. When it came to the present moment, I could not tap into it because I only could tap into that energy when I was angry. I only could tap into that energy based on the level of my level of emotional intelligence. Only when I was angry. I didn't know this at that time. Only when I was angry, only when I was insecure, only when I was in doubt, only when I was in something. So since the only time that I could tap into that energy was during those points in time, I had to create something that had authority over that energy. Now, we talk about this, we're working with deities and aspects of that aspect. I had to create something inside of that space, understanding that Lucifer is the aspects, Lucifer, Satan, the aspects of an adversary. I had to create an adversary. I had to emulate an adversary. So inside of that space, since I only could tap into the energy only when I was angry, upset, insecure, and all in the aspects of those emotions, I only could tap into that adversarial thought only based on, at that point in time, only when my pops was upset. Only when my mom's was going through something. Only when certain people were in certain environments acting a certain way. This is where we create these aspects of these limits that I always talk about. Only in the present can you bring order. Only in the present can you bring peace. Only in the present can you bring balance. Anytime that you are not present, you have to learn where you're actually at in the aspects of your emotional flow. So if I'm in the emotional flow of resentment, then I'm in my past. Simple notation. If I'm overly anxious, I'm thinking about the future. But the key is asking myself that question and then giving myself the rebuttal to that question. Could the version of me then that was going through what he was going through, would he survive or would he expand in the now? Would he expand in the now or would he simply survive in the now? See, this is a major key because a lot of times we're doing a lot of our work with lack of processing based on that same old thought, I can get through anything. I can get through this. I can do this. I can get through anything. I've survived this before. I've been through worse. So a lot of times, once again, those same adversaries that we created in the past, we either emulated or co-emulated indirectly or indirectly. We're telling ourselves subconsciously, because subconscious, remember, it only records everything is true. It don't record everything is good, bad, whatever, up, down, left, right. So I'm sitting inside of that space and I'm realizing that I'm telling my subconscious, whether I want to believe it or know it or not, that I need the same adversaries. I need the same energetic adversaries. So every time that I did something in my present, in order for me to do something in my present, in order for me to have a reason or authority or responsibility in my present, I needed the adversary. I needed to create that adversary in my present or to attract the same adversary in my present. The unresolved acceptance of my mother, the unresolved acceptance of my pops, the unresolved acceptance of my mother's narrative, friends' narrative, certain people, until I resolve those things, I would always come to the present, attracting that adversarial character. I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I'm a good man. I'm a good nigga. I'm a good person. So guess what I would need? I would need something that would be the adversary to me being the good person. That means everything from this person being in a bad space. This person being in a bad space. I'm going to take on those responsibilities of that person being in a bad space, even though I don't have authority inside of that space. What's the authority? That relationship, that friendship, what you want a relationship to be, what you want a partnership to be, what you desire, what you want a relationship to be, what you want your job to be, what you want that space to be like. But it's going to be based in the aspects of being an adversary. So you'll never connect to it. There'll always be the gap. And there being that gap inside of that space, and I say this all the time, your ego is an excellent employee. Your ego is an excellent employee, but it is a horrible boss. Your ego is a horrible employee, horrible boss, but an excellent employee. So inside of that space, every time that I came into that space, I spent more time trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be valued for what I could do and what I had. And then when I was triggered, the only thing on the other end of that, being the adversary of my own adversary, was based on what I didn't have and what I didn't do. So now we think about your arguments, the tit for tats. 90% of your arguments that you have with people, I've gone over this before, the videos on my channel, further down. Most of the arguments that you have are always based on what somebody didn't do, what they are doing, what you want them to do more of, what you want them to do less of. They would have this. They wouldn't have this life if it wasn't for me. They wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for me. My favorite Jay-Z line was like, said you may hope, go ahead and make another one. Even inside of that space, when I was finally feeling freedom, I didn't know what freedom was. I didn't know what peace was. I didn't know what being sovereign was. I didn't know what those things were. So even inside of that space, when I'm actually being able to be separated away from something, remember, the same way you go out is the same way you're going to come in. Inside of that space, I felt the need to now become the adversary to prove something inside of that space so they did not forget me. I told you in the beginning that I'm one of two ways. You either get this side or that side. You either get the loving, which is actually the fear-based me. You either get the loving male, which is the lower base of me, or you get the cold-hearted, don't give a fuck, hurt your feelings type shit. I needed a reason to be that way. I did not understand because once again, going back to what I was saying earlier, what I said, if we build up to this point, I only knew how to access said energy through whatever emotional current was present at the time. I only knew how to tap into it at that being angry. Think about it like this. You'll go to the gym, you'll work out, you'll get a better job, you'll go get this house, you'll do whatever you need to do. And in the back of your mind, even if you don't say it out loud, you're hoping that they see you. You're hoping that they say something. Now think about this. Let's go further out and look at the general aspects of the aspects. It's our behavior that creates our environment, and it's our patterns that populate our environment. I want you to hold that in your mind. It's our behaviors that create our environment and how we interact with our environment, and it's our patterns that populate that environment. It's your patterns that populate your environment. You get what I'm saying? It's your patterns. It's your patterns that populate your environment. It's your behaviors that create how you interact with your environment. So if my behavior inside of a sense is I have an unresolved complex to actually speaking up for myself. I have this unresolved of this need to speak up for myself, set boundaries, set standards. Since I'm not sitting in the aspects of resolving it first and going through the process, 9 times out of 10, this is when you get into the space, now that you're starting to learn yourself and your initial behavior, which is to create a boundary, there's a process to building out your boundaries, becomes creating barriers. That means ghosting people, cutting people off, ghosting people. You cutting off people every week. You cutting off people every month. You stop having this conversation because it made you feel some type of way. But how many times have you sat with yourself inside that space and really sat with that feeling? The why it made you feel that way. The why it made you feel that way. I don't like the way that person was talking to me. because it made me feel disrespected. When in reality, when you start doing a root analysis, you didn't feel disrespected. You felt insecure because you couldn't react. You couldn't react. So in that conversation, that argument, that text message, you sent a whole damn text message trying to set up these cues and these points inside of that space for them to respond a certain way or react a certain way, and it didn't work. Old buddy didn't look at you the same way. Old girl didn't respond or react the way that you were used to. So you took that reaction as the next plausible effect to your behavior and your pattern. The aspects of that lack of self-worth. Oh, this person doesn't notice me. That person doesn't notice me because you spent your entire life making your worth and your value based on what you do for others. You've made it a quintessential point inside of your life to make sure that when you do something, even if you're not saying it, but to honor it, whether verbally, non-verbally, in aspects of your body language, that energetic language and tone, that people understand and see that you've done something for somebody else. That's why you get triggered every time you see somebody doing something for other people and trying to get credit for it. In every case is different, because what you're seeing inside of that space is your own unresolved need to do that same thing. You can get upset when you see somebody with a camera feeding a homeless person. But for you, it could be taking you to a moment to where every time you ask somebody for help, like I'll use an example. I remember every time when I would be in a space of around certain family members, friends, and things of that nature, I developed this barrier. It wasn't a boundary, it was a barrier, that I stopped talking to my mother, because every time I would tell my mother something, everybody in my karmic family loop would know. So I would stop talking to my mother. It would work for a little bit of time, but then after a while, the only thing that I did was look for other energetic containments to tell my stuff to. It wasn't the fact that my mother was saying everything. It was the tone and the energetic undertone of why I was telling my mother. If I'm telling somebody a problem, I'm having an issue, I'm having a problem, or this hasn't happened, or I need to do this, and I have not yet solved it, I have to think about why I'm talking to that person. See, one of the biggest things, especially with me, like dealing, especially now that I'm in a space where I'm actually helping my mother through her healing process, going through her own shadow work and her own healing, is accepting my mother for who she was. Because until I accepted my mother, as in this example, for who she was, what she was, who she actually was, not what she did, not what she didn't do. I had to get out of this space, and I always talk about this with my clients. I had to separate my mother from Dorothy, from Dee Dee. I had to separate my mother from that space, because what my mother was, based on what she did and what she didn't do, those are the things that I was always using as my cues into whenever I jump into a relationship, friendships or whatever, I'm continuing that same dynamic. Not based on who this person is, but what that person can do, what this person has, what this person doesn't have. My mom didn't have this, so in my mind, the only way that I can find an attachment to somebody is by doing that for that person. So I must look for a person that needs that to be done for them. See how that See how you keep creating that loop? So I'm never present. This is how I'm now never present inside of the aspects of that process. I'm never present. Because the moment that it doesn't work anymore, or I stop doing it, or I lean back from it, I stop adding that pressure. They don't need it anymore because now I've saturated that space with that energy. Now they don't need me anymore. Now I feel triggered. See, now I don't do things for people based on need. I did a video. I haven't uploaded it to YouTube yet, but I was talking about the aspects of the difference between the divine masculine or the divine masculine or divine feminine do not provide, protect, or nurture or guide. The divine masculine in the side of dispense, it invests in what it is it invests in what nurtures and guides in alignment with his purpose. The divine feminine, she invests in what protects and provides in alignment with her purpose. There's a difference when we say that aspect. Because I did not have a purpose. Because your purpose is only found in your present, being present. Because I did not have a purpose, I spent more time buying. Literally and figuratively, I spent more time buying into others, buying others' affection. Simple aspect, but to think about the aspect of that space. Every time you've heard a conversation between, we hear all these little gender war comments. Every time we hear them aspects, it's always based on what you've given. Man, I worked 6 jobs and I worked 4 jobs and I took care of the house and I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this. Man, every time this, and this. And I gave this and I gave this and I gave this. Here's the key. Here's the key. I did not want to sit with the first space that I learned balance. Because it wasn't the balance that I wanted to see. But in the first place that I learned balance was with my mom and my dad. The first place I learned balance. Even though that balance was based on fear, that balance was based on survival, that was still the first place that I learned balance. And until I accepted that first wave of that aspect and sat with it, and sat with the resentment, sat with the anxiousness, what's up, fam? With the anxiousness in that side of that space, I couldn't tap into the aspects of really observing it. I could not see the simplicity that even though it was based on survival, my pops was the one that worked. My mom is she was the quintessential at the house, doing the stuff at the house. But I never understood the aspects of the balance. There was an actual balance there. My pops would go out and he go work. He come home, tend to the outside of the house. He always said it, his responsibility was to rear me and my brother. His responsibility was to rear me and my brother, rear me and my brother, set the tones for me and my brother. My mother worked inside the house. Whenever Friday came, my pops gave her the check, gave her all the money. She went out and she paid all the bills and went grocery shopping. And her job was to rear my sisters at that time. I couldn't see it. Because all I could see was what I wanted to see. Even in that aspect of that space. And then when we come out later and we aspects of our shadow work, I only could see what I wanted to see. Based on what I wasn't getting. Or based on what I'm seeing outside in my everyday reality that I did not yet build with inside of that space. The reason that this is important is because until I sat with that, all I could do was emulate from that space. all I can do is emulate. All I can do is emulate from that space. Looking at what my pops did and what we had and what we didn't have. Looking at what my mom's did based on what she didn't have and what we did have. I created my behaviors were structured around that. Fights, arguments, any of the traumatic events that happen inside of that space, I could not get to the point of resolving it because I did not understand that inside of that space, it was not resolved. That space was not based on resolve. See, the thing when it comes into when I'm doing this aspects of this work is you have to understand that you're unresolved and where it came from, and understanding and able to impact to use that energy. Ultimately, my pops transitioning the beginning of last year, my pops did everything. Mr. Van Sickle did everything in his power, in his ability, in his authority as the father figure that he conditioned himself to be. My pops did everything that he could do in the conditioning of the father that he desired to be. My mother, did everything that she could do inside of that space based on the conditioning of what she wanted or valued a mother to be inside of that space. Blessings, 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 blessings. She did everything inside of that space that she needed to do in the aspects of what she needed to be inside of that space. I did not accept this, so naturally my behavior reflected that. Until I understood this, 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Until I accepted this, until we accept that narrative, that point, all you're going to do is carry on the resentment. I remember listening to my mother have conversations with my aunts, her sisters, and people. And I never understood why I didn't feel it. I remember sitting there having conversations with my pops, and I wondered why I couldn't feel it. Like, I could not feel, for the life of me, my pops was like the lecture master. I never understood why I couldn't feel it. And the only time, here's the key, the only time that I did feel it was when I was feeling resentful, when I was feeling regret, when I was feeling insecure, when I was feeling in doubt of myself, when I wasn't feeling confident of myself. That's when those conversations made sense. I remember the same thing in aspects of my mother. I never could feel this type of way until I was sitting in those spaces where my behavior would be triggered inside of that space. So since I wasn't sitting in the aspects of that feeling, in the present, every time that I had the potential to learn, every time I had the potential to actually learn, it was met with trying to perfect the past, trying to rationalize dysfunction, that's the past, or allowing my anxiety to rise so high to a point because I didn't have the aspects of the future that I wanted. I was so locked into, because of my past and not accepting this, I had to realize, like, a simple thought. I realized that when I was in high school, when I was going, even when I went to college, I remember I didn't have an idea of what I wanted to be when I grow up. I didn't have that. I never had that feeling of what I wanted to be when I grow up. I never had that, oh, I want to be this and I want to be that and I want to be this and I want to be that. Because of my initial environment, all of my thoughts were already predestined in my mind. So only based on what I saw and carrying on the resentments of my pops, the regrets of my father, the pains of my father raised me, the pains of my mother raised me. Naturally, inside of my space, everything that I did was to create that. Either it was to create the adversary and try to rebel at all costs. I was always trying to rebel. There's a difference between you trying to rebel and you executing your actual rebellion. There's a difference between you trying to show that you can rebel based on movements and you actually in that rebellious state of energy and that actual energy and the potential of rebellious energy and actually gaining momentum. Simple point. If every time you do something, after it's ran its course, you made a couple of moves, you made your movements, you did a couple of movements or whatever, after it's ran its course, you always find yourself regressing. You always find yourself regressing. You in your past. Use an example. You wanted to be, you saw somebody giving a phenomenal speech, or the way they command the camera, they command the space with their energy. You don't understand that it's their energy that's commanding the space. They understand those emotional tones, even if they're doing it unconsciously. You don't understand that part. So now you find yourself, okay, cool. What did they have in the space? First thing you look at is surface. Oh my God, the nigga's outside in the sun. So if I sit outside in the sun, then I could do that. Oh my God, he's sitting in, you feel what I'm saying? That's the aspect of you thinking about movements. So until I have this, and this, then I can't make that move. As opposed to the rebellion, tapping into that rebellious energy, is the aspect of creating momentum. Momentum is only based on discipline. Discipline is only based on acceptance. Acceptance is only based on acknowledgement and actually learning where you're actually at and learning why you had to go to certain spaces, why you had to go over there, why that experience was detrimental, that experience was necessary. That experience was necessary for you. It wasn't something like, oh my God, I'm tired of going through this and I'm tired of going through that. Okay, cool. You're feeding your resentment. I'm tired of not feeling that I can feel like my love can be valued. I'm tired of feeling that my love cannot be valued, or I cannot be valued as the person as who I am. But you're actually thinking about you're actually thinking about what you have and what you don't have. Because I can guarantee you, in the spirit of that rebellious nature, tapping into that rebellious energy, remember, every energetic point has a lower and a higher aspect. The lower aspects of rebellion is revenge and being vengeful. Is revenge and always being vengeful. So the only time you seem to be able to rebel is when it's time for you to go get vengeance on some damn body. The only time that you rebel is the only time when you're trying to get revenge on somebody. I'll show him I'm going to become the woman that since he could not accept me for who I was at the time, I'm going to become the woman that he can't have. Since she couldn't accept me for not having money and not being ballerific and all this shit, I'm going to become that motherfucker in vengeance. So you start to rebel. As I always say, the same door in is the same way out. The same way in is the same way out. Every single time. You can trick yourself and be like, ooh, but there's a window. I'll go through the window. The only way to come out of that space is the way that you went in. So when we tap into that rebellious energy, that rebellious nature, me tapping into my rebellious nature in the higher sense is contrast. It's contrast and embracing conflict. Contrast and embracing conflict. My rebellious nature, in this example as we're building out, my rebellious nature has made me, I remember in the beginning, it was weird for people saying it to me, my rebellious nature in itself has made me nothing that I speak on. I remember the first time, like when I was doing Friday night lectures on my YouTube channel, in every video I was prompted to say, usually when I said it, I would like, that was my cue to exit out and let Lucifer come fully in, let Samdi come in, let them speak until I understand how to use the energy. And I remember I always say, yo, we got to make this shit normal. We got to make this shit normal. We got to make talking about our emotions normal. We got to understand the aspects of our emotions, our emotional intelligence. From our emotional intelligence, everything is a byproduct of our emotional intelligence. Energetic, you want to work with energy, you want to work with magic, you want to work with magic, work with energy, work with deities, you got to understand that everything has a lower and a higher aspect inside of its space. Use it as example, like everything has a higher and lower aspect. When you look at the aspects of an example, like using Baron Samdi as an example, in the lower aspects, that's where you see the trickster. That's where you see the trickster. You see the aspects of chaos. You see those aspects. But in the higher aspects, when you see him, top hat, long coat, you're seeing these symbols. He's always in a gentleman's attire. He is pure potential in gentleman's attire. He is in order. Everything that he has on is in order. There's a reason for it. Even though it is rebellious, the only aspect of it being rebellious is that it's outside of that comfort zone. But when you're stuck inside of your comfort zone and you're trying to tap into certain energies, all it's going to bring forth is dysfunction. All it brings forth is dysfunction. Use an example. I want to have abundance and I want to tap into Lakshmi energy. Go ahead, tap into her if you want to. Tap into that energy if you want to. Since it being a feminine counterpart of energy, if you have any wounded feminine aspects within inside of yourself in your wounded feminine space, man and woman, if you have any unresolved emotional aspects, those are going to be the things that come to the forefront. Those are the things that you're saying need to be nurtured. So if you're saying that, I want abundance and prosperity, follow your thought. If your abundance and prosperity leaves you in a state of regret, resentment, it's in aspects of your past. If I had this job, this much money, this back in the day, if this happened to me back in the day, I would not be where I'm at. You dishonor where you're at. Now you dishonoring where you at. Now you're saying you don't want to be there. Of course you don't want to be there, but why? Why don't you want to be there? Because it makes me feel resentful. It makes me feel feelings that I don't want to feel. That's why you're there. But if I'm stuck in the aspects of vengeance, I'm stuck in the aspects of revenge, I'm stuck in the aspects of me getting validated, My rebellious nature is only going to go as far as that fear allows me to go. My rebellious nature is only going to allow me to go as far as my fear has gone. I built my behaviors were based on fear. My behaviors are based on fear. The fear of not being accepted, the fear of rejection, the fear of not being seen as being the same, the fear of not being seen in my values. So the only spaces that I could interact with were all based on fear. See, this is where your ego kicks in. Your ego is trying to protect you so you can stay inside. Your ego is trying to protect itself so it can survive within inside of that space, because you built that space based on survival. So now at your job, you upset at your job. You upset at the people at your job for doing what they're doing based on who they are, because you have not yet resolved the historical purpose of that individual, because you don't understand your historical purpose of going into that reason. The reason that you define that space, what that space was originally designed for. One of the hardest things that I use as an example is your job is not meant for what you think it's meant for. It's not meant for that. The whole historical purpose of your job was for compliance, complacency. That's what your job was originally for. That's what your job was originally for. Until you accept that aspect as that example, when your rebellious nature comes in, the highest that you go to is you'll put a request in to be off and they don't approve it. You say, well, hey, that wasn't a request. That wasn't a request. That was, I'm letting you know I won't be here that day. That's the highest that you'll go inside of that job. The highest that you'll go. That's the highest you'll go. That's the highest you'll go. You'll sit there and think about, ooh, I want to make more money. Ooh, I want to get more money and more raise. But you don't want to assess your responsibilities and shift your responsibilities, because that means you got to learn new skills. How many times have you sat at a job and they said, oh, we have an opportunity. You said you wanted more money. And because the purposing of that job and what that job is designed to do, they gave you an opportunity to be a manager, a supervisor. And every time that they gave you that offer, the only thing that you thought about, as high as you could go, was the fear of how people are going to look at you. So in the aspects of that fear, you had an example inside of that space. We've all had that motherfucking dude or that chick that acts like they're the manager. They're like the kiss ass. So you defined unconsciously in your mind that the kiss ass is what you have to do to be a manager. I don't know how many times when I was sitting at my jobs and me doing everything that I was doing, and I was always met with from people this adversarial comment, yo man, like you better than me, because I can't see myself, not saying that you kissing ass, but I can't see myself doing what you doing and losing my freedom. I go back to the moment I said it earlier on in this live. I went back to that adversarial moment of my pops saying that I was calling me Lucifer. I went back to that moment. I went back to that sense of resentment. So since I'm only used to tapping into that energy based on resentment, what would I do? My whole conversation would be, nah, man, see, I ain't nothing like them. I'm just here. I'm trying to make money just like you. I'm just trying to make my money, get my bread. Oh, so yeah, cool. So now, waiting for the reaction from them. Oh, you're so cool. So we gonna go hang out? All right, we hang out after work. Now, I find myself inside of a space, going out. I have myself, now I'm going out, hanging out with them, and now it's late. I drove, because now you gotta look at all the events that come up to that point. I was driving at that time. Okay, if I'm driving, all right, cool, y'all can ride with me. Or in my mind, I'll be like, it was always this either or. Yeah, the us versus them aspect. It was always this either or. It's like, okay, cool. If I want to drink, that means I'm not going to drive. That means I'll ride with somebody else. That way I don't have to drive. That way I ain't got to give nobody a ride. So now I'm putting myself at the hands in response. I'm putting the responsibility over myself into somebody else's hands. All I can do is repeat that loop. All I can do is repeat the loop and emulate from the space that I just came from. That's all I can do. I didn't have authority over myself. I didn't have authority because authority is only found in the present. So now I go out to this. Now I go out to this venue. I go out to this club. I go to this kickback. There's a fight. Even though I'm not involved in the fight, simply me being there, not understanding how it worked, me being there energetically is what set the tone for that fight. I opened up that door. I have to accept everything that goes into that space. See, only in the present can you accept the absolute. It's only when you stuck in resentment or you stuck in over anxiousness that you do not accept the absolute of something inside of a space. 90 times, most times out of 10. So now I go there. This shit end up being 3 or 4 o'clock in the damn morning. It's 3 or 4 o'clock. 3 o'clock in the morning. Now I'm just now getting home. Now I'm getting home. I get home. I take a shower. I lay down. I wake up. Go back to work early. I go back to work the next day. Everybody that was at that event doesn't show up for work. Everybody that was at that event don't show up for work. And the ones that do show up for work, they too fucking hungover and intoxicated to even do their work. The only thing that I can say is like, yo, I was there too. I was there too, and I'm here on time. I'm here early. I was trying to put my authority in the same space as others. I was trying so hard to fit into that space, not understanding that I'm doing this based on guilt. I'm doing this based on me feeling the fear of being rejected. If I didn't go to that event, I'm still in the mindset. And then when we look at the physical population, I'm pulling from every time I was whether I was in high school, middle school, elementary school, all the way back to when I was first going to my grandmother's house. This is how far you go back into the aspects, tapping into that energy, all based on the resentment of not being accepted in those spaces. That was the weight. That's the weight. That's the shit that hits you. You have an issue that every time that I saw anger, it was always a destructive force. And since I defined destruction as being bad, I would hold back from becoming angry. So I'm living it. Remember, you're living in the extremes. So either I'm doing something when I'm super angry, super upset, because it's really my anxiousness, it's really my anxiety kicking in, that unresolved conflict with myself. So then I'm like, yo, I don't feel shit about that shit. It's kind of like when you say, I don't care. They shouldn't have did what they did to me. You're automatic. This is how you create the adversary. They shouldn't have did what they did to me. They didn't have to do what they did to me. So why did you do? So this is how you got to think about it. All you're doing, it doesn't matter what you do. It's always in reaction. It don't matter. Whatever you do, you're doing in reaction to something. Yeah, that's that example. The aspect of managers hanging out with, in this sense, the aspect of managers hanging out with non-managers or not with other spaces is you're leveling up. Inside of that space, you've shown that you have certain authorities and certain capabilities inside of your space to where, yo, I can't hang out with them anymore. Everything that I did up to this point is what made me the manager, is what made me the supervisor. Everything I've done up to this point is why of this. Is what I did and what I didn't do, what I had and what I didn't have. But until I understand the why behind that, the reason I became a manager is because I always had the example. It was always some manager running around that they allowed the title to say that they had a certain authority for respect. So my idea of being a manager was truly because I wanted respect. I lacked respect in myself because I did not understand that respect was based on capacity and ability of application. So people didn't trust. I didn't understand the aspects of how I had to gain trust because I didn't know what trust really was. I had a definition of what trust was based on the aspects of that resentment facility. When I didn't understand trust in its simplest form is based on capacity and ability. Right now, use an example. I can trust my mother to cook an awesome Sunday dinner. I can trust my mother in her skill set, cook a bomb-ass Sunday dinner. I can trust her to do that. She has the ability to do that. But to trust my mother to come outside or go outside of her house and cut the grass or do stuff inside of her yard, she doesn't have the ability or the capacity to do that. That doesn't change why I trust my mother, because I've accepted who she is inside of that space. That trust and ability aspect. Without understanding the trust and your capacity and ability within yourself inside of those spaces, no. Remember, everything has a higher and a lower aspect. Your thought process of how you define trust in your earlier on scapes was based on the aspects of unresolved based on fear. So it became externalized. The reason that you trusted somebody to do something was because of their displayed capacity and ability, what they did and what they had, what they didn't do and what they do. You feel what I'm saying? But your trust should only be based on who a person actually is. Because let's give an example. I think I've used this example before in a session, actually. One of my uncles is an alcoholic. Is a straight fucking alcoholic. So his capacity and ability to do work was only to supplement his addiction, his vice and his addiction. So naturally, inside of that space, anything outside of that realm he would try to use to supplement his energy inside of that space, he couldn't do. He couldn't do it because he only doing enough so now he created his entire space. His job, most people's jobs was like 9 to 5. So he works a 9 to 5. So he worked from sun up to about 5 o'clock. After about 5 o'clock, okay, cool, it's beer 30. And then he's either going to the gas station, grocery store, Walmart, wherever it is, to go get his alcohol. Go get his fix. This is the aspect when we look inside of these spaces with ourselves, not knowing who this person is. It's easy to write somebody off as the title that we gave them. Oh, that nigga's a narcissist. Oh, Shorty's a narcissist. Shorty's this. Do you understand what a narcissist is? At the core. Not the intellectual definition, which is an important aspect only to a certain point. But I'm sitting with clients all the time and I'm like, yeah, I was in a narcissistic relationship. I'm like, yep, Do you know what the narcissist does in the beginning of every relationship? They mirror everything about you as a person. They mirror everything that you are. They mirror who you are, and they mirror who you are in the things that you don't even know about yourself. And since you are not used to knowing who you are, the things that they do that are actually aspects of you that you wish that you could do, or you wish that you can do, or you wish that you can be, that they can do those things, those are the things that you attach your unresolved to. Those are the things that you attach your insecurity to. You literally say it. Oh my God, I'd be so insecure I would be so insecure to take pictures the way you take pictures. I would be so insecure to be at the gym. I would be so insecure. So now, since you've attached your insecurity, your regret, your resentment, your dysfunction to that aspect, now you formulate around that now you're going to start formulating around that aspect to survive. Because as long as they're there inside of that space, you don't have to go any further. So what you actually happens inside of a narcissistic relationship, and when you separate away, I always say, from separating from a narcissistic relationship inside of that space, the no contact rule that I give every person, the no contact rule. That no contact with that person, you're not used to sitting with the space that was created. See, the biggest thing in the aspect of you dealing with any relationship that you're dealing with things around you is understanding the space that you now created. That's the process. It's understanding the space that you created, accepting the space that you created and why you created it, and going through the process of not trying to perfect it, not trying to run away from it, not try to avoid it, but to understand its actual purpose. Understand what the purpose of it was for. Yes, you did it. Yeah, you did it. Yeah, they did what they did. Yeah, they did what they did. But if you're sitting with that anxiousness, you're going to go into the future. I don't understand how they did all these things, and now I'm sitting here stuck with the mess. You have not accepted your part in the mess. You may have acknowledged it, but you didn't accept it. Because acceptance in that survival narrative means that I have to partake in it, or I'm still partaking in it. That's why a lot of times when you sit inside of spaces and you go from this relationship to this friendship or whatever it may be, you're trying to, your level of acceptance is what you're willing to partake in. Acceptance in the higher aspects of self is based on, I can fully accept this person as who they are, what they are. I can accept that person as who they are. I do not have to partake in what I am accepting in order to accept someone for who they are. See, this changes that narrative in the aspects of even building out those relationships. We're going to get later into that within the aspects. In the aspects of how I build my relationships. Because I was accepting others, partaking of responsibilities with no authority. Because my authority is my purpose, only found in the present. So 9 times out of 10, and we've done this shit, I was watching the 85 South show. And it was an episode that had Dion Cole on there. It's on YouTube, 85 South show. Carlos Miller, Chico Bean, and DC Young Fly. And Dion Cole, they're all comedians, so they made it funny. But they were like, there's men out here right now that are becoming stepfathers before becoming real fathers. There's women out here right now that are becoming stepmothers but becoming real mothers. Because, and then I go deeper into the aspects when I get the information. Like, thank you, Spirit, for hitting me in the head. So I'm sitting there inside of that space and I'm like, I'm stepping into these responsibilities to become the adversary to the original authority because I'm not ready to let go. I'm not ready to let go. I'll take on everybody's shit because I'm not ready to let go of my own unresolved. I'm not ready to let go and deal with my own unresolved. Then you create your behavior. Your behavior forms your environment. Your environment is populated by your patterns. Your behavior formulates your environment, and your patterns populate your space. So now you got to think about the definition of that relationship with yourself. One of the hardest things I had to sit with, one of the biggest things I had to sit with, I don't like saying hardest either. The words that I'm working on, not saying, the words that I'm working on actually understanding the meaning behind them is, for me, for this month, is can't and hard. There is nothing hard. There's always a challenge. That means there is a process. I'm never saying, stop saying can't, and I'm saying to acknowledge what I won't do and why I won't do it in order for me to actually sit inside of that space. Because shadow work is an ongoing process. Because it's a different part of your aspects of your purpose. Sitting inside of that space with my aspects of sitting with that realization, it changed the way that I value relationships. It changed how I went into certain relationships. It changed my tone because I was now becoming more present. I had to realize that most of my relationships, my reputation, the resources in which I gathered inside of that space were never based on being present. Because I noticed that when I didn't have a certain resource, when I didn't have a certain relationship, when my reputation was at stake, when I felt resentment, when I was feeling resentment, when I was feeling this unresolved, I always went back to the past to try to perfect my past. When I got overly anxious, if I go too far, in the feeling of going too far and not being accepted by people, that means I was stuck in trying to formulate the future based on the version of myself from then, not now. See, the version of me now can flourish in my past because he's not worried about changing the past. The version of me then cannot survive in the present. Cannot survive in the present. They can't survive here. And that's the root of my fear. Why they can't survive? Insecurity. Why they can't survive? Doubt. Why they can't survive? Because they're built based out of insecurity. They're built based out of doubt. They're built based out of these aspects. So of course they can't survive of course they can't tap into their well-being where I'm at. But when I sit with that, that old aspect of yourself, it's a constant aspect of not so much of a lie, but it's this fabrication of events that you're still attached to, that you only have access to, as we've been breaking down, based on certain emotional cues. If I built up my male ego, the alpha male, remember I always talk about there's no such thing as a fucking alpha male. There's no such thing as an alpha fucking female. That's the lowest aspect of yourself. In the male aspect, you're literally programming yourself to stay a male. You're literally programming yourself to stay a female. If you go on my page, of course, after we're done with the live, and you go down, I made some posts yesterday. I made a post of the phallus, and I made a post of the vagina, and I put on one side the aspects of the healed aspects of using this energy, and I put on the other side the aspects of the unhealed aspect, or the male and the female inside of that space, and you'll start looking at the aspects inside of your space. You feel what I'm saying? You start understanding the bonding process inside of your space. Me now, in the aspect of how I even use infatuation, because in the masculine sense, how we bond is based on infatuation. To catch that infatuation, my level of when I used to catch infatuation is now different than when I was in my male state. I was out of grace. Because I would use infatuation only went to a certain skill set. That means if this person was infatuated with me, that meant that, ooh, they like me. Ooh, they like me. Ooh, they need me. Ooh, they want me. Ooh, what can I do for this person? What can I have for this person? So now every conversation was about movements. And since I'm moving in, remember, when you're moving in fear, you tend to move very, very fucking fast. If you look at this environment that you have populated because of your patterns, if you look at this environment that you created based on your behaviors, 9 times out of 10, when you go into a new space, You're looking for things to help you populate and stand with your patterns. You don't understand your patterns. You create an adversary or the bypass to your natural patterns. Use an example. If you go on Google right now and type in courting, the actual courting, the definition of courting and the length of time of courting. Courting lasts for 8 months to 2 years. 8 months to 2 years is the courting phase. That's the courting phase. That's the getting to know their schedule, getting to know their schedule. Do you align with their availability and the interests and the aspects of free time? About 8 months to a year before you even come into the actual dating phase. Here's the key. You get scared about actually courting and getting to know somebody because from the fear-based state, your behaviors and your patterns, 9 times out of 10 became predestination and assumptions. How many times have you been inside of a space and somebody asked you, okay, so what do you need? And nothing that you said, you were very either skeptical to say what you needed, you were in fear of saying what you needed. Oh my God. Well, if I had this and 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 I had this, then I'll be able to do these things. And then you are presented in that form, those things, and then you come with another list of the reasons why you couldn't do it. It's because you ain't built out that space. I've talked about this before. I say this all the time. I've been married. I've been in that self-union to myself since August 16, 2021. Married to myself. Divine masculine balance. The way that I view things now is different. Instead of me being so quick to and try to save every damn body, I have to understand everybody's where they're at because of where they need to be at. And the only reason that I was so quick to try to jump into that space or jump into these aspects and spaces a lot of times was based on me trying to feed my resentment, my regret, my doubt, these emotions that I have not yet resolved. Now you're trying to make movements to say, okay, cool. Well, I'm able to do this. It's like if I wake up every day in the AM, yay, I'm able to wake up. And then Bobby Hemmett said, nigga, a rat woke up this. Why did you wake up? What are you using it for? It does me no good to wake up if I'm not doing anything, aspects of, am I doing shit based on my rebellion, tapping into that rebellious energy to circumvent a pattern and circumvent that behavior? Or am I actually learning my pattern and behavior? Learning my behavior and my pattern. Learning how to allow things to be inside of a space. Not hitting myself with, well, they're not where I need them to be at, so they can't be around me. Instead of taking this adversarial role and be like, yo, why were they presented to me? This is an honor in my present that this person is. I woke up and said, I'm in gratitude. I woke up and said, I'm in honor. I woke up and said, I'm moving inside of my purpose. I'm waking up saying that I'm protected based on being aligned with my purpose in the honor of gratitude. I woke up with my mantras. So this person is now a lesson and blessing to the aspects of me learning that. You feel what I'm saying? I had to understand, like one of the things that I say a lot of times is you have to define what was the milk in your story. We all heard the story like your dad went away, walked away. Your dad left and for some milk and cigarettes and never came back. Your mom left to go find herself and never came back. What was the milk in your story? What was the thing that your mother went and found that made that she didn't come back? You feel what I'm saying? Your mom found her resentment. Your pops found his regret. They found that aspect of themselves. Most relationships end because they're getting too close. Most relationships in that old traumatic bonding dynamic, when you're getting too close to the root, that's when they start to unravel, because the space was not built or conditioned in the aspects of balance. It was based in dysfunction. It was based in dysfunction. Your whole aspect was based in dysfunction. One of the things that I said earlier on in lives and lectures was the first person that you got to accept, the first thing you got to accept when we go through the healing process is you benefited from your trauma. You benefited from your assaults. You benefited from what happened. You benefited from what happened. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't bring it up every 15, 20 minutes. You wouldn't bring it up all the time. If you really didn't need it, you wouldn't bring it up every time. It's kind of like when you say you don't care. If you truly don't care, you don't have to say you don't care unless you're teaching from it. That's the teachable moment. I don't have to say I don't care about things because it's not even in my space to even care about. Makes sense? It's not in my space to care about inside of that space. As you're learning these aspects and these tools with yourself, that I said it in the last live I did, you have to accept where you are at. You have to acknowledge where you are at and accept where you're at. You cannot skip over accepting where you are at and immediately go into, because usually every time you do it, when you apologize, it's based on being from lack and guilt. I'm sorry for doing this to myself, and I'm sorry for doing this to myself, and I'm sorry for this, and I'm sorry for that. So then you're going back through a whole bunch of regret. You're going through a whole bunch of you're going through, you're going around the emotion, but you're not sitting with the emotion. You're going around the emotion, but you're not sitting with it. You're not processing it. You're acknowledging what happened, but you're not accepting what happened for what it is. So you're not processing it. Since you're not processing it, you can't sit in the now and bring order to your life of why the fuck this shit keeps happening. You're saying to I need that adversary. Think about the aspects of your difference, your relationship mindset in a relationship, and evolving yourself out of the male and the female space and coming into your divine space. The divine aspect is investment. Everything you look in aspects of spirituality, the aspects of divinity, is an investment. It's an investment. As above, it is an investment. But if I'm investing in all of this shit in above, in my spiritual, that means in my present, I'm telling myself what I'm investing in my present. Am I investing it into my past or into my present? Is the reason that I don't believe in this now and I'm doing this because of what I went through back here? Or is it because I want to see myself here? Or is it based on being present? That's the investment in the present. When I invest in the present moment, I'm accepting where I'm at. I'm accepting that, oh shit, I'm not where I have not yet learned. Because now, when I apologize to myself, it's a decree to actually go through the process of change. If I say, damn, my bad, I kind of jumped too far, I'm acknowledging and accepting that, yeah, I moved off impulse. I'm so used to doing this, and this, and I'm sitting there and I'm processing it. Because this is how you gain access to that past aspect without having to use that same emotion. If every relationship you were a good person, you're only going to tap into the aspects of being a good person. So whatever happened inside of that relationship that made it so it ended, you're going to pick up where it ended to keep trying to do that point. Well, I did this, and this in the relationship, and this person acknowledged this, and this. But then when I tried to do things for myself, that's ultimately what it is. When I tried to do things for myself, they didn't accept it. Why is acceptance based on somebody partaking in what you needed to do for yourself? What's at the root of it? Is it guilt, doubt, shame? What's at the root of it? When we sit with that root, that's what brings us into that present. That's where that's where the emotions start to come up at. A lot of times, because we're so stuck in that aspect of that spiritual aspect, ooh, I wanted to go meditate. Ooh, I went and burnt candle. Ooh, I went and did these things. And then you feel something, you're not used to what that, since you have not defined what that feeling is in your physical world and what it's coming from, you immediately try to use it either to rectify the past or to construct a false future. So you go from time to time. Time after now you're getting stuck in aspect of time. So now inside of your space, your behavior, you didn't develop a new behavior because you haven't resolved the old behavior, the roots to the old behavior. You have not resolved that pattern because say it backwards, Dawson. Say it backwards. Say it backwards. Your physical pains are not the results. Your physical pains are not the your emotional pains are not the results of physical pain. Your physical pain is a result of your emotional pain. Switch it around. That's the first step, is acknowledging that. That's the first step in acknowledging that. Your physical pain is not your physical pain is the result or the manifestation of your emotional pain. That's the first key. That's the acknowledgement. The acceptance is that because of my emotional pain, because of my emotional pains, I keep manifesting physical pains directly and indirectly in order for me to stay and not to give myself this sense of responsibility to my pain. So then becomes the apology. So now here comes the apology. I apologize to myself for not accepting, my inability to accept that even though what happened to me inside of that space in that point in time was out of my control. There's nothing I could have done based on the information that I had. But I understand that because I'm moving in the lack of information that I had, I'm trying to gather information and use it to fix that. Because I have not accepted that no matter what I pull from this space, only in the present can I resolve it. Only in the present can I bring the potential to the aspects of that order. As I sit in the aspects of this decree of this apology, what is it that I need? What is it that I need in my space that is now being presented to me in the present? What am I using? What blockage or what am I using in the physical world that is not, that I know, here's the key, that you know isn't working. You know it's not working. You're just doing it for the glamour. You're doing it for the fundamentals. You know it's not working. You know it's not working. And then once again, you go into the acknowledgement, to the acceptance. I know this is not working. What is needed inside of this space with myself? Of this physical pain that I keep, what emotions am I not dealing with? You know what I'm saying? What behavior, my behaviors, my patterns populate the space for me to keep that physical pain going? It's not about how long. Okay, that's how we get stuck. This is how you get stuck. Resentment makes you think about how long, and then your anxiety makes you think about, okay, how long? Okay, if I do this, and this, then I'll be all right. Nah. It's sitting with those energetic pulls. It's sitting with it and allowing it to pull you back there. It's allowing yourself to acknowledge acknowledge it for what it is and stop trying to make it something else. A lot of times when we're sitting there with when we're in the emotional pools, we're steady trying to define it as something else instead of foreseeing exactly what it was. One of the biggest things for me, like my pops was in pain from the day that he was born. From the day that my pops incarnated, he was in pain. He was in pain. My whole father's incarnation construct was based on his mother died. His mother died on the table as he was being born. He was born through pain. So everything that he rationalized in his mind had to come through pain. Everybody had to prove themselves based on their amount of pain that they could take. My pops literally manifested, I remember back in, I would think I was like 12 and 13. I was like 13. My pops manifested and had a heart attack. The physical world literally was like, oh, nigga, you got to sit with the shit that's inside of your heart. Blood thinners, all the medications that he had to take. Because he never sat what was inside of his heart. He never sat what was inside of his heart. Ever. His ultimate release was releasing from the aspects of what happened inside of his heart. So he went through that cycle with that pain on his heart every single time. Every time something was released, it only can be filled by something else paining and aching onto his heart. In that heart space. He never went above his heart. Inside of that space. He never had a chance in his mind, he never had that chance to sit with that energetic pool. I look at myself for a lot of things that I do now in contrast to what my pops used to do and how my pops used to be. I notice that everything that I'm doing is now in contrast and not in competition to what my pops was. Before that point in time, every job that I worked, every relationship that I got in was in competition with my pops. Was in competition with Charles. Every rational reason and logical reason of rebellion that I chose was based on that. But until I sat with that energetic force and allowed myself to be hurt, instead of saying I'm hurt. I'm hurting. Why am I hurting? Because this person did this to me. You're not hurting. You're not hurting. That's surface level. It's not real hurt. It's not real hurt. Sorry. It's not real hurt. I'm here to tell you it's not real hurt. Yes, it hurt on a surface level. It pours us some tears. You'll be hurt. You're going to feel some shit. Yes. But your true hurt is something that you're doing to yourself. That's why every time that it does hurt, you immediately go into everything that you've done for people. You go into that whole spill to bring yourself back into this false sense of being present with yourself. And you only do that long enough to get to the next point. But since you spend all the time trying to cultivate that aspect through that point, you're simply looking for the next jump. Yay, this happened next. Yay, that happened. But you're not really doing anything. Because only in the present, only in your present moment, can you bring order, tap into potential, and aspects of growth. You must accept where you are at. You must accept where you're at in full. You must take accountability for yourself in full. Inside of that present space. You must allow yourself to sit there and actually feel that pull. And even if you get anxious, scared, whatever that emotion comes up, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with that. You must accept. Nine times out of 10, whenever it comes to an aspect of you acknowledge that you can't handle something or you can't do something, you don't accept the why. because the why is behind those emotions. So by the time you acknowledge it and you get to the point of acceptance, what happens? What happens? By the time you get to that acceptance part, you didn't try to tried to rationalize it in so many different ways to avoid it, instead of doing what's necessary. You avoided it and tried to gain all the access to the accessories. That's why when you came into your spirituality, you ain't got black tourmaline, black onyx, you got all these black stones. Oh, I'm doing a cord cutting. I'm cutting all of these cords. I'm doing a cord cutting and cutting away all of these cords. Okay, cool. You can cut the cord, but until I understand how that cord was created and what it attached to inside of myself, it don't work. It'll just regrow. It'll just reform itself. And it will become stronger. Because only thing I just did was I showed it that this is what I need inside of that space. I made an effort. I didn't tap into the process. I went through an effort. Because the moment that I felt freed from it, since I'm only used to infatuation, since I'm only used to dissociation, yay. I'm released. I'm free. I'm healed. Now understanding that healing is an ongoing process. Now understanding that I really have to sit with these feelings, sit with these aspects of these emotions, and I don't know how to do that. I need to sit with that shit. And I can't use, it is improbable, remember we're working on not saying can't anymore. It is improbable for me to use the same facilities that I created in the aspects of fear. I cannot use the same facilities I created in the aspects of fear. That means if I enter the room in fear, the only way I can leave out that room is in fear. If you've worked with me, if I work with you, you notice that I never let you sit in your fear. You'll sit in we're going to leave you sitting in your shadow, but you're not sitting in fear. You can meet me what I can't, I won't, I'm like, yeah, you can. And you're going to do it. Because until you do it, you're going to keep coming back to this same spot. And I'll leave you inside of your shadow. I'll leave you inside of that space. I gave you every tool up to that point. I aided you and assisted you up to that point. I can't do it for you. No one can do it for you. We can do past life regression, but you have to be able to sit with your past. We can do past life regression, but you got to be able to sit with your past long enough. I only can go where you have allowed yourself to go inside of that space. But that's the key of you becoming present. Everything that I now do is in the aspects of me being present with myself. Every reality, now I have access to all of my multiple realities of me doing something of this nature. Every conversation I've ever had that was along the lines of what I do now, I now have full access to. That means every conversation that I had with friends, family members, co-workers, whatever it may have been, where I gave them that conversation, talk to them, it was less about how they took it and more about why I said it. See, when you do shit based on the emotional pull of the acceptance, you're only going to have conversations to be accepted. I don't have conversations to be accepted. I do not have conversations in the sense of being accepted based on somebody partaking in it. Because the only reason that you're coming to me is because, let's look at my process. You've acknowledged it, but you haven't accepted it. You haven't accepted it because you're still partaking in it in some way. You're not ready to let go of how you're partaking in it. You don't know how you're partaking in it. Coming to me and sitting down with me, we're going to look at, okay, cool, that's why you're still partaking in it. You're partaking in it because of this emotional dialogue. Now let's work on that. Now we're going to go through the processing of these emotional dialogues. But yeah, usually, yeah, there's so much more we can get into this aspect, but I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave it here in this space. It was just a very sunny day outside, and I was like, you know what? I want to change up my scenery and sit somewhere else. And I wanted to just sit inside of this space. And I had the thought, it was crazy. I had the thought I was going to just record a regular video. I was going to record a video, put it on TikTok and make it a reel. But then as I kept, it just kept getting more and more and more and more. But yeah, the only way to deal with that energetic force, that energetic pull, is really having to sit with, it's not so much of what you're about to lose, it's what you gain from it. It's what you gain from it. That's the thing we don't like to accept a lot of times. You don't like to accept that your job paid you. I say this all the time. You don't like to accept that your job paid you for sitting on the toilet and hiding. You don't want to accept that part. You just want to accept the part like, yo, I did all this work and then they got rid of me. You overused the space. You overused the energy inside of the space. You did not encapsulate what was needed inside of that space. It's okay. It's all right. But that's going to be that major key in the aspects of your growth. You're not doing all of this shit to stay the fucking same. You're not doing this work. You're not doing this work for some surface level shit. I'm doing it to escape. That's the same thing as saying you're going to the gym to lose weight. Of course you're doing it to escape. That's surface. Of course you're going to the gym to lose weight. That's surface. Why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? I did it. I used to do it because I was insecure. Now I'm not doing this shit because I'm insecure. If I was doing this shit based on being insecure, I wouldn't say the things that I say. Not without fear. I would use the, ooh, I gotta be I gotta be so fucking real and because I didn't understand what transparency was. Transparency comes with discipline. Transparency comes with discipline. Transparency does not come with dysfunction. Transparency does not come with disorder. Transparency only comes in the present. Transparency only comes with discipline. Transparency comes with potential. Transparency comes with order. So once I've acknowledged what I've not been transparent about, I must understand that I had a lack of discipline. I had a lack of order. I was not accepting the potential or the opportunities that were presented to me, or when these opportunities were presented to me, it's how I used them that backfired. It's how I used them. I wanted them to be something that they weren't based on something that I'm still not giving to myself. See, that's that shit. That's that shit. Shit. You always had a choice. You have a choice right now. You can either go the next 2-3 weeks, couple months, doing the same old, overthinking it, over resentful, regret or everything, or you can actually start to sit with that process. I can't aid you in any other way. I won't aid you. Remember, we're working on not saying can't. I won't aid you in any other way. I won't aid you in any other way other than what is necessary. In your present, what are you doing with it? In the present, what are you doing with your what are you doing right now in the aspects of your present that is necessary for the aspects of your actual growth? What you've been doing for the last, you've seen it wasn't working. It's not yielding a result that you deem quality. So it might be time to change. It's not so much about the change, it's embracing the impact of what happens with that change. It's embracing the anxiety so you can sit with the root. It's embracing that resentment, regret, revenge, and sitting with it. And then getting to the root. And that's what I help with. That's what I aid with. But yeah, I'm about to get up and it's gonna be make me a smoothie or some shit. I desire you to be the fucking best. I'm not here for you to get better. I'm not here for you to feel good. I'm here for you to get better. For the ones in attendance and the ones that will watch this video after, my inbox, the link above in the bio. You are the only one that matters. This is the only day that matters. Everything from this point is a repeat of either you making the choice to grow, making the choice, or not making the choice. You've seen the results of not making the choice. You've built out your world based on not making the choice. You've built out the world based on being indifferent, insecure, and all. You've seen what those are. It's only through those that you can now go into that space of building out a world where you're actually not in need of that anymore. And it takes time. It takes time. This shit is not going to be an overnight sensation. It takes time for you actually to step into the aspects of your presence. It takes that moment of going through the actual processing. It takes, you know what I'm saying? It takes you going through the experience to actually understand and learn yourself. One of the greatest things that I learned, that's what I'll say before we end it out, is, once again, the me now would thrive in the past because the me now would not try to change anything. The me then cannot survive in this present space because he would try to change everything. I'm going to say that one more time. The you now, you'll know when you're in that space of flourishing, when the you that you are now can step into the past versions of yourself, step into that, visualize those past versions of yourself, and not try to change anything. You're not trying to hot tub time machine. You're not trying to back the future it. You're not thinking based on, ooh, if I had this back with, no, you're not. That doesn't even come up. And when it does come up, here's the key. When it does come up, you're able to actually sit with it and bring it back to the present. That's one of the major keys. That's one of the major keys and aspects of doing your work. Because once you tap into that, you have access to all of those ultimate realities of yourself. There's a version of me in the example. Every version of me that's ever worked out is no longer working out because in the present, I'm no longer working out based on being on insecure, being unconfident, not being in balance with myself, things of that nature. So I have access because all of them are no longer doing it for that reason. So they can continue doing it inside of their space. There's a version of me that's speaking like this, face to face with the camera, not fidgety, not looking off every damn where. Because every time I would look into the camera or present myself to people, I had to be a certain way. I was trying to perfect something instead of just speaking. So all of those versions of myself are now learning how to speak. They're learning how to present themselves. They're learning the balance. They're learning the cues. They're learning body language. I'm learning. They're all learning in one continuum. The version of me that felt that I needed to be into a relationship in order to validate myself, no longer, because I'm acting in that relationship with myself now, and so on and so forth. But it is a process. It is a process. It is a process that I am honored and in gratitude to aid and assist you in, But it's only based on your dedication to you. Because I'm already either done it or doing it. So it's never going to be based on me. It's going to be based on you. But I'm going to get out of here. I've absorbed as much sun as I needed to absorb for the day. It's Friday. Welcome to Venus. It's a love day. services, readings, consultations, you know, all that good stuff. Inbox me. Really hit me in the inbox. Hit me on the website. And that sets something up. Space is becoming more and more limited. That's gonna be, you just gotta be honest. Space is getting more and more limited as I'm building as we're building and going forward. Gratitude, appreciation, honor, privilege, purpose, prosperity, provision, prosperity, protection, provision, abundance. The energy that we now flow forward through. This is not the end. This is the end of how you used to be and the beginning of what you're going to be. I love you. We love us. Ashe.